It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
All right, welcome back. This is episode number 9. Today I got a very special individual, a friend of mine, mentor in the fire service community, a mental health ambassador, Captain Steve Farina. Steve is one of the most influential leaders that I know in the fire service regarding mental health. He has a true passion to help the fire service become healthier organizations to work within. And in this episode, Steve will reference many resources that you can access, and they'll be located in the show notes. Steve shares some very important messages about mental health, sleep, fatigue, stoicism in the fire service, and the power of connection. Captain Farina is in his 31st year serving his community, as well as vice president of the BC Professional Firefighters Association. For those that know Steve, know he's a very hardworking individual, compassionate, passionate, caring leader, and he's a very humble advocate for firefighter mental health. This podcast is sponsored by Silver Arrow Coaching and Consulting, burnout and resilience coaching for high-performing individuals, specializing in firefighter and fire chief coaching. For more information on Silver Arrow Coaching and Consulting, visit www.silverarrowco, that's silverarrowco.com. Now sit back and enjoy this great episode with Captain Steve Farina. Until next time, stay well. Good day. We have Steve Farina on the line. How's it going?
Excellent, brother.
Excellent. Tell our listeners a little bit about who Steve is and where you came from, your history, and what brought you to where you are today.
Well, the RCMP didn't want me, so that's my origin story.
That might be a good thing.
19-year-old kid. Yeah. And from there, I got paid on call in Langley Township, spent 5 years with them. And then I got hired in 1997 with Coquitlam Fire, and I've been there ever since. I'm 26 years on the job there. So it's 31 years in the fire service, and I'm loving it.
Impressive. 1997, that's the year I joined.
Right on.
Yes. Fantastic. So what are some of the things you've noticed in the fire service change since you became a volunteer back in the day to today? What's changed, do you think, your point of view, in good ways and bad ways?
Yeah, I'd say let's start off with the good. There's been a very healthy evolution, especially here in BC, where when we first started back in the day, we didn't really talk about mental health, right? It was all about the job, being professional, knowing what to do on scenes and stuff like that. But it was never processing the stuff that we saw after. And I have to say, Langley Township in the early days actually had a citizen program. They were one of the first. That's when I got introduced into the Mitchell model, and they attempted to do that. They had some very forward-thinking leadership in there. They had a couple of they were teachers before they got into the training division. And it was Dave and Terry, and they were awesome. And they brought that into, they were early adopters of that kind of model, but it wasn't fully accepted in those days. It would suck it up, buttercup. And we always talk about that.
For sure. Yeah.
You see the calls, you come back, and there's like this machismo, this stoic in a negative way, I would say, because stoicism definitely has a place in our job.
Yes.
But the evolution of that getting incorporated into our daily didn't come until years and years later when I was with Coquitlam. And I would say even the last 10 to 15 years, half of my career was not really into mental health. And then we transport to 2015, where I really got pushed into this mental health world where we had 2 back-to-back suicides in Surrey. And that rocked our world, and we stood up and paid attention. And it's interesting. It just stayed in the shadows for so many years, the hurting, the suffering, the suck it up. So on a positive note, out of tragedy has come some really big awareness and and connection. I think that's the biggest piece, is connection, and that same here, I hear you, I see you mentality. And like yourself, right? Coming out. And I think what's come out of this is courage. And for yourself, like the courage to take a knee, the courage to say, hey, I'm hurting and I need help. And I think that Dr. Duncan Shields talk about that is the antidote to stigma is courage. And I think that's where I've seen the fire service come. We've courageously stepped up to the plate, and we're hitting hard on that and making sure that people have access to resources. So that's where I've seen this evolution of when I first started, the captain in the front would lean back after a SIDS call or a really crappy call and look back, goes, any pussies needed diffusing. Like it was that mentality. And really, we should be looking forward in the cab because the years of service and the age is truly the biggest backpacks in the front seat.
Good story. Yes.
So, and I think that's where we've definitely grown. I think we've realized in leadership roles and then like yourself in chief roles, there's still so much stigma. And I think that's the downside. We have so much stigma still around mental health challenges. And in leadership roles, you come in with a giant backpack of years of working in that industry where we did talk about that stuff. So you bring that with you into those leadership roles. And sometimes the added pressure of that organizational stress really takes people out at the knees. And I think that's at all levels, union executive levels, fire chief levels, and then all the way down to the ranks. I think that the new people coming into this job are going to be much better served, hopefully. And yeah, I think both of us had that mentality of leaving it better than we found it. I think that's the legacy we want to leave, is making sure people are supported in physical and mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. I've said it a few times on the podcast. It's exciting times, honestly. I think the next generation, the generation after that, we are going to have some very healthy, well-rounded firefighters that are going to take the fire service forward into our communities.
Yeah.
When you mentioned connection, what does that mean for you? Connection.
And I don't just mean on a local level. We're reconnecting, I think. And I look back in my career, around the coffee table, that is connection, right? That is where I think we in the fire service stand out with the other services a little bit more. There's a major protective factor of connection. And I think when you're suffering, you disconnect. And when you're depressed or you're withdrawing from yourself because of your operational stress, that seems to be a default, right? Becoming disconnected. I think we're way more cognizant now that we want to keep those people connected when you're into retirement or off on an injury. And what I've saw is there's this evolution on the coffee table where social media comes into play. People are becoming disconnected even around the coffee table. They're all in their own little worlds on their phones. And I think one of those things that we really want to be aware of is how do we reconnect to human beings again instead of just talking about hunting, fishing, sports. That's where I see where we are healthier. And yeah, that to me is, and it's not even just locally, man. It's like North American wide. I've made connections right across Canada and North America and have got brothers from another mother all over now because we share the same experience and story. And I think trauma bonds, but so does that connection piece where you are seen and heard by other people and you validate their stuff as well. It creates this amazing network of support from coast to coast. I got a buddy in Halifax right now. We've got people coming into our firefighter resiliency program because we made a connection in Ottawa. And it was like right away, he opened up, took a knee. I was very honest about my own journey with him and we commiserated over some alcohol. Maybe it wasn't the best thing to do. That bridge has got him sending people now to our coast for help. That's what I talk about connection is we can help each other with that stuff. Like your book, that gets people talking. And then it's such an awesome thing. It is an exciting time.
It is. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with connection. I think that is the key because that builds a safe environment for people to speak openly, vulnerable, be honest. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's such strength in vulnerability too, right? And it's permission giving to others to share their own story. Like yourself, sharing your story. I've seen the comments, I've heard people reach out and say, hey, me too. If you can do it, I can do it. And then we resource them. Then we connect them to actual mental health professionals or programs. And we get them from surviving, moving them to thriving. I think that's very exciting.
So where did your passion for mental health come from? Where was the birthplace of your passion for that?
Here's an interesting thing. The suicides in Surrey definitely woke me up to that. And Mike Hurley, he's the mayor of Burnaby now. That was our association president for the BC Professional Firefighters. And when that happened, he jumped into action. He said, we need to get in front of this. And so he formed a mental health committee. And because I was pretty active in the health and safety world, he put me on that committee. And that kind of got me in the right direction, I guess, for trying to put my mind and our group collective brains together to see how we could solve this one and get upstream. And at the same time, WorkSafe BC did the same thing. They held a stakeholders meeting at WorkSafe in Richmond there, and they brought in everybody from from the police, fire, paramedics, corrections. They brought government in. They had employer groups there. And so collectively, we formed that BC First Responder Mental Health Committee. And we've got employers and labor represented on that committee. But for myself, it was working side jobs with a fellow by the name of Tony Spees. And so he was a local firefighter veteran, and we were working a confined space standby job, and we were talking about our brothers and sisters that were suffering. And he was like, we got to do something about this. And he was involved in the Veterans Transition Program back in the early 90s. I want to say it was 97. Actually, yeah, just when I first started getting hired. And so people were coming back from Bosnia and Afghanistan and their conflicts, and they were pretty messed up. And they created this Veterans Transition Program to transition back to civilian life. And so he was part of this group of Duncan Shields, David Cool, Mark Westwood. I can't remember the other fellow's name, but they created this Veterans Transition Program. And we need to do this for firefighters. You got to meet Duncan. He's the beast. He's the guy. And so that was like our origin story for our transition, our own resiliency program, as we met at Burke Mountain Fire Hall. It was 2015. And talk about serendipity. Like we had two of our members in Surrey die by suicide. And then I meet Duncan. And he talks about the program. And within 5 minutes, I'm not kidding you, I'm like, we're freaking doing this. And I'm going to do everything in my power to work collectively here to get funding to make this happen. And so we were able to get a WorkSafe grant. A few of us were shopping at Costco. We went up to Loon Lake, and him up there, he's a Maple Ridge firefighter. He's still taking good care of us. So this is 2017, we run our first pilot. And so that was like my origin story into this is connection with Tony, meeting Duncan, and then just all the wheels fell into place. And it's just, we've been running full tilt ever since.
Does that fill your passion, that energy for you? Does that, I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your voice.
Yeah.
It fills you up. It fills you up.
It does. Like that gives me strength and light and hope. And not to say that it's not heavy, man. When you see people suffering, I've had to learn to really set boundaries around that, because you can I'm a bit of an empath, so I take that on, right? And it got, over the years, depending on my own personal life and stuff that I was going through, it became very heavy. And in fact, Dr. Shields and Dr. Cool were always bugging me. You got to come through the program yourself. You got to see it to believe it. And I already saw the results of other people coming through. What I had to do, and it's only in the last couple of years where I really had to set that aside, that empath part of me, to try to create some division around that, to say, hey, I'm here to help you. In my own mind, I'm not going to take on that rock. I'm not going to take on that extra energy. I'm going to do my best. And if we lose people along the way, that's going to break my heart, but it's not going to make me stop doing what we're doing. And taking care of myself, like that self-care, like you and I've talked about that. It's not selfish, but we are programmed to help others. And we spend so much energy and time on other people that we forget of ourselves along the way. And like yourself, we have to do a bit of a reset and take a knee ourselves. And I had to do that in 2019, man. I actually have to go through our own program. And I finally said, yeah, let's do this. I had a whole lot of unpacking and discovered a whole bunch of stuff that I had pushed down. It does. It fills my cup up. And I tell you a little story, like, if you can save one person, like that, to me, you're like, you're done. I'm like, mic drop moment. We're good here. And we've been doing this. We collectively have been doing this work for, like I said, since 2017. And the stories, man, coming out of there, it's like and it's 4 days. We're talking this resiliency program. It's actually 3.5 days, but it's intensive. And I had several people now, and I'll tell you, I've shared this before. I met a fella and his wife. They came down from the interior, came down and met me at the Cactus Club in Coquitlam. And they just wanted to say thank you. Well, it'd take me out for lunch to say thank you. And I was super humbled by that. I'm like, that's awesome. You're on a good path. And he goes, you have no idea. I was and we screened for suicide before we put them through our program. You can't be on any drugs or alcohol, and you can't be suicidal. You know what? We're freaking great liars, right? With our mental health. We're sneaky about it. Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm totally good. I got this, right? Yep. And so he said, driving up, it's 7 kilometers up a gravel road. And he said, you know how many times I looked at trees thinking I was going to veer off that road and smash my car into those trees? I was like, holy shit. Like, it was like this unsettling hair on your neck moment. And he goes, when I got up there, he was scared. He was nervous. And he goes, you know what? You saved my life. And I remember I can almost tell the story now without crying, because in that moment we were all crying, and he kept on saying that you saved my life. And I'm like, no, man, like I did it. I connected you to people. You did all the heavy lifting. You got yourself out of this. Like, we just resourced you, man. And you had a group of people that came together to see you, hear you. And that's so healing there. Like, you want to talk about stigma smashing, to be seen and heard, to tell your story, to not be judged, to blow the shit out of that shame. Dude, man, transformational. So that's what fills me up. It fills me up.
Yeah, no judgment. I think that is the key,
Right?
right? If we can talk about this kind of stuff with zero judgment, man, that's a game changer.
It is a game changer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you talked about boundaries. I'd love to know what you put in place. Like, how did you put that? Because I think boundaries are very difficult for a lot of people. And
it is.
What worked for you?
Yeah. I know it's funny, that gets brought up in our peer support work all the time. And when you're in these helping professions, helping roles in leadership, in whether you're on the admin side or the union side in a peer role, it is so crucial to put those boundaries in place so that people aren't calling you all hours. There's the 911, right? Like, you're getting called, I'm suicidal, like I need help. We're like, call 911, I'll meet you at the hospital, or do you need me to drive you? So those are those moments where you're like, you're going to do that. But then when you're dealing with really psychologically injured people, they can spiral, right? And they can consume a lot of your time. And I've been finding that and it's no fault to their own, right? Their brain's just going a million miles an hour. They're dysregulated. And so to not get sucked up into that vortex, I've really had to really like take a breath. And I don't know how else to put it. It was a switch in my head where I'm like, I can't sustain this level of empathy and compassion. And I'm not to say that I'm not empathetic or compassionate, but I'm just like, I have to put boundaries around it and limitations. And so that's what I did for myself. I'm going to schedule some time. I'm not going to answer my phone. That was the biggest one, is people would still phone me. And I don't answer now because I'm like, I'm not in a place. I'm when they're spending time with my daughter. I'm doing my own self-care. I'm in the kayak, on a bike, or whatever. And I used to just always didn't matter where it was. Like, that was an emergency. And it was like a negative way to fill my bucket up. It was like, I felt needed. I felt wanted. I felt like I was helping. And I think I can still do that and still take care of myself at the same time. And I think that's where it's like, just, setting boundaries around the phone, picking up when to connect people. It's like, hey, I'm busy right now. I will reach back out to you in a little bit. And just that pause is really helped me. And it's built my capacity to help other people too. And the main thing is taking care of myself, not feeling guilty about that piece, that self-care piece.
Was there guilt originally when you stopped using the phone? Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Are you kidding me? I had to fight that because they need you. That's that draw. It's like, they need you. They need you right now. And I had to go, you know what? They'll be fine. Unless they're like actively suicidal and they've got a plan, they're like up on the bridge, like whatever, then you jump into action and you might answer that. But you can't answer every freaking phone call and jump to the pump all the time because it's exhausting.
Yeah. And when the time comes, they really do need you. You're going to be exhausted and wiped out, or even in a crisis yourself.
You're no good to anybody if you don't have capacity, right? You can't give from an empty cup. And I think that's really crucial. You got to be very aware of filling your own bucket. And and I always do this with my daughters. There's a little pitcher and it's got this little jar and it says happiness on it. And the person across from her, have you seen this? It's like, where did you get that? And the character says, I made it myself. And if you don't do that yourself, I just love that. And you can't give it away. Like you're responsible for that. If you give that jar of happiness to somebody else, that's on you. You can't blame other people for doing that. So
So you touched on self-care. What do you do for your own self-care these days? What's working?
Oh man, this morning before this call, I took my brother's up in Kelowna right now. I stayed at my brother's house. I took Big E, their Black Lab Mastiff, out down the ravine, and I looked out at Okanagan Lake, and the sun's coming up, and you feel that warmth and that hike and getting your heart rate up. That is, and then of course the dog love, right? He's so hilarious to be around. That's the stuff that, really re-energizes me. Been watching sunsets every night up here, glass of wine on the deck.
Yeah.
And I took my daughter out on the kayak at Bunsen Lake the other day with the sunshine. And of course I forgot, she's always on the stand with the paddleboard. So forget the bloody paddle. So I'm towing around the lake with a rope. She's just loving it. I'm like, God, a little extra exercise. Yes. And I bought an e-bike as well. So
Oh, nice.
I've been cruising around on that thing, and it's got the old man saddlebags, but I'm like, I can load that up with beers at the brewery. So
A
that's pretty
little
good.
wine and beer tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a
what I've
regular
been doing.
routine for you, is like getting
Yeah.
outside, hiking,
Oh,
dogs.
outside.
Yeah.
You know it, right? It's, I see you with your dog and the smiles,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's that's
Right.
the stuff that fills
Yeah.
you up. It's
Cool.
nature and in
Yeah.
the trees and seeing water. And yeah, that does it for me.
Awesome. You touched on Loon Lake before. Do you want to dig into that a little deeper and what that is? I'm sure there's some people listening that aren't familiar with Loon Lake, and
Yeah,
totally
well, it's ironic that we call it Loon Lake because it is the BC Firefighter Resiliency Program. It's actually, the police now have their own program as well, but that came from that conversation with Tony and meeting Dr. Shields. And so they were the men's initiative at the time affiliated with UBC, and now they are the Blueprint, which is a nonprofit affiliated. And they're all about changing men, making stronger men in building communities. And I probably got that wrong, but they're a collective of 3 docs that are putting their minds to, if we have healthy men and healthy boys, we're going to have a healthier society, I think. And I think stronger fathers and stronger daughters. And that kind of mentality has been put into giving men a safe place. And actually, I shouldn't say just men, because we've had tons of female firefighters come through our program as well. It's creating this healthy community where they feel safe. Like you said, they can be vulnerable, not judged, and they can tell their story. And so those 3.5 days are transformative. And what we've seen from there, it's literally changing fire culture. And I'm thinking it's going to do the same with the police. The police are later adopters, and they're already seeing results of people coming into that program and coming out the other side on a new trajectory. And it's not meant as inpatient treatment, but it's meant as an upstream, kind of midstream piece where you come in, you got a bunch of rocks in your backpack, you're feeling heavy, and you come through and do some group work and some individual work, and you come out the other side and you're either ready for counseling, ready to go back to work, ready to reintegrate with your family and start on a healing journey. And I think that's the crux of that program, is rewriting the ship perhaps and getting into a different direction that's a lot more healthy. And so that's that program. And it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club, but you got to go through yourself to really see it. I'd love for you to come through.
I would love to as well. Honestly, I'd love to.
Yeah, we definitely, and we're filling up like crazy. And the really neat thing is we got a Movember grant last year or 2 years ago now for over $400,000. And so they saw the value in it. And so it's shared between the police and us. And we're running a bunch of programs that covers the clinician costs and some research piece. And the real thing that I've struggled with, or we all have collectively struggled with, is finding sustainable funding for that program. And we know that there's statistically significant results coming out of it. We're talking 3-month, 6-month follow-ups where we do a little pre-screening, right? We do like a Beck depression inventory and a bunch of other PTSI screening. And what we're finding is that those 3.5 days are sticking. Like we want to do a 1-year follow-up, but after 6 months, symptomology has decreased and sustained, which is unheard of for a 3.5 day program. But because it's intensive and they're long freaking days and a lot of heavy lifting, we're finding it's really changing, rewiring your brain a little bit.
Beautiful.
It's very cool, man. Yeah, it's very cool.
So who can go to this? Is it any first responder across Canada, or is it BC, or how does that work?
It's meant for BC firefighters. So the BC PFA kind of helps coordinate there's a program coordinator. He's a Coquitlam firefighter. So he basically does our intake and putting people into programs. It's mainly BC firefighters. But like I said, my friend Mike from Halifax, when I met him in Ottawa, he came through the program. I picked him up in the hospital, stayed at my place, stayed at my hospital, stayed at my house. I drove him up there myself, and he's putting 3 other firefighters in Halifax through. So from coast to coast, like unreal. Right. But do you remember Lionel Cruther? I don't know, maybe not. He was in the house fire that lost 2 captains died in house fire. Yeah. So Lion Fireground survival guy. Yep. He came through as well and put a couple of Winnipeg firefighters through. No, to say that it's just BC firefighters. No, we put a guy from Washington, DC through, a guy from Saskatchewan. It's kind of cool that we're able to open up seats for other people. And we've been around a few paramedics through and volunteer firefighter. couple of volunteer firefighters, actually. I think our last class had one from the island. So it's not just, and then that's the fire side. And then the police have their own program that just started up this year. So they're putting a bunch of their own muni police. Yeah.
And Loon Lake, that is in the interior BC. What's
No,
that?
everyone thinks that. It's not. It's actually
okay.
Maple Ridge. I know,
funny.
it's crazy, right? It's Maple Ridge UBC Research Forest. And
Oh,
I
no
tell
way.
you, yeah, like
Jeez.
you drive up this gravel road and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And I don't know if you've seen the Movember, they did a bit of a promo on our Loon Lake program.
I did. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So that drive up there and you're the trees, and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, a lot of people think it's in Kamloops or wherever in the interior.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. You guys are definitely making a huge impact in the first responder community, the firefighters. Yeah, like you say, 3 days to have that big of a change.
It's impressive.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'd love to check that out.
You should, Matt. And I think it's because we're not afraid of hard work, and you give us a task, we do it. And so, when the doctors say you need to timeline, like you're going to sit down and you're going to timeline from your earliest childhood memory to becoming a first responder, and then another timeline from your first responder time to present. And everyone just rolls up their sleeves and then they delve into that, and they really put a lot of energy and the support and the camaraderie, like never in group work. There's a ton of group work out there. But with this particular cohort of first responders is you have this shared and lived experience of going through traumatic events. And so you know each other's jobs, you know what we see. So there's that familiarity and this bond that happens. It happens so quickly, like this cohesiveness that is created like within the day one. Like you come in strangers and it's that awkward whatever, but you're still like a firefighter's firefighter. I don't care if you're from Florida or the Yukon, you're the same person, probably driving a pickup truck. There's so many stereotypes.
Yes.
But there's so many similar characteristics, qualities, integrity, pride, like all of these things that we share. And I always say it's magic to the two doctors. It's like, not magic, Steve, but I'm like, it is 100%. There's some voodoo shit that goes on there, and you just feel safe. And they're such humble and curious docs that they make you feel safe. You're able to be in a very positive way, and you can take off that cloak of stoicism that protects you and makes you a professional. And stoicism gets a bad rap. I think Duncan talks about that in our new video series that we're rolling out, is that the Stoics had it right. Like you live a stoic life on our job. When you go to a call, you want to be stoic. People don't want you showing up like losing your mind.
Totally.
So you're professional, you do that, and you set aside emotions to do your job. And then after that, stoicism doesn't serve you so well when you want to process what you've seen. Right? That's where we get that wrong.
Yeah, that's the weak link, right? Yeah.
You know it.
Yeah. We have the armor on when we're going to a call, and that's fine because that's what we need to do. But sometime you have to take the armor off and process whatever you saw.
Absolutely. And my David Cool, one of the docs there, always says that armor serves you well in the battle, but it doesn't serve you well at the kitchen or the family dinner table. Right? Yeah.
So to get enrolled into the Loon Lake program, you have to have a condition, do you have to have a PTSD?
No, not at all. You just literally, anybody can come through.
Okay.
You just put your hand up and I think we're packed. Like April's full, we're running June's already full out, and we're filling up November. And unfortunately, we don't have anything through the summer. You literally just email. There's a link on our website. I think it's BC Firefighter Resiliency .com. I can share the link with you.
Yeah, please.
If you look
at the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. And you can just text or call the number at the very bottom of the web. It's on every page on that website. And the intake guy will put you on a wait list or put you into the program. And you don't have to be diagnosed with anything. That's the nice thing is this is meant to be upstream. Like this is meant almost, before you have to take a knee. But so many people, I don't know, if you've been more than a year on this job, like you're going to have some stuff. And I would love for every single firefighter to go through this. That's probably not realistic, but it's meant for anybody. You don't have to be. And in fact, if you are inpatient treatment worthy and you kind of screen like that, and you're in the red, we're going to direct you other avenues because this is not meant like that. But if you need to take a knee and you're like me, I'm a liar and I'm fine, but I'm really carrying a lot of weight.
This is to really yourself.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like you said, 1 year in, there's probably trauma or stress from their childhood, from their careers
Yeah.
beforehand. So
Yeah.
even those
Yes.
brand new recruits are going to have some
Oh,
sort of rocks in their backpack to unpack.
exactly. And I think just being a recruit and a rookie, there is so much pressure. And I don't think and gone are
Yeah.
the days of hazing, I hope. But that is it's
Mhm.
formative. It's almost like a childhood experience because it's
Yeah.
formative in your career. How you're treated as a rookie and a recruit, as a probationer, really sets the stage for how you move through your career. If you're treated like a piece of shit and you're yelled at and screamed at and you're like, they do the old army thing and break you down,
Yep.
that's unless you're a super mature, strong person to go, okay, this is just part of it and whatever. But if you're the 21-year-old kid, that's where I see problems popping up later on in careers, 10, 15 years down the road, right? And they either turn into a bully themselves or they are broken because of that. And it breaks my heart to think we could train people and still maintain their dignity and tell them the important things and teach them how to be a good firefighter without berating them and belittling them.
Got that right.
So that's a whole nother podcast, man.
Yep. I have to make a note of that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. And I don't think too many people understand the pressure a recruit goes through. So that's a good point. Yeah. Great point.
Just think of just getting hired. It took me 6 years, maybe because there's something wrong with me, but I remember going through all of the processes, all of the interviews, like the panel interviews, the groups of, I think writing for Vancouver, I want to say there was 3,000 applicants. There was like groups of 500 at SFU writing in the auditoriums, right? And it was just like waves of people coming through. And then the physicals, just like a wave of people. Like it is so competitive. And I think I don't know, you think of that 500, even with 500 applicants, we had just hired 12 people.
Yeah.
Like I was in a group of 7 when I was hired. Like it is highly competitive just to get in through the door. Going down to Texas, if you're working full time, you want to be a firefighter. Now you got to take time off. You got to outlay money now. Before I was paid to go through the course. The course was paid for at the Justice Institute in Maple Ridge. And now they're paying thousands of dollars to get training, taking time off work. And that doesn't put stress on your family. Holy shit.
No,
Yeah.
So you're walking into the fire service already with a whackload of stress and backpacks. Yeah. And debt.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's not like a doctor debt, but
yeah. Steve, I'd love to chat about what your thoughts about sleep are and firefighters sleep, and how we can tweak that, because we know we're in a job that's rotational.
Yeah.
We're in a job you get an alarm at whatever time in the morning. It's totally unreliable, irregular.
Yeah.
So sleep is always going to be an issue, most likely. So how can we
sure.
optimize that?
Yeah, that circadian rhythm interruption, I think as a younger firefighter, first responder, shift work's going to mess you up anyway. The International Research Agency on Research and Cancer has said shift work is a known factor to cause cancer and metabolic syndrome. And so just coming into this career, whether you're a nurse, firefighter, police officer, paramedic, we already start in the yellow, let's say, on the mental health continuum. Our sleep patterns are interrupted. And like you said, 2 a.m, you get tapped out for a call, your cortisol dump, adrenaline dump, and you're wide awake and your circadian rhythm now is completely interrupted. And so how we manage that, it's just as simple as sleep hygiene. There's so many, what I've been learning over the last couple of years is it's such a complex thing, especially in the workplace. If you're just trying to manage your sleep at home and you've got a regular 9 to 5 job, you can do things at home to prepare yourself for sleep, to make sure that you set yourself all up and you protect that sleep window and don't get into sleep debt. With shift work, it's a reality of our life. That sleep debt piece, we have to be so much more aware of the dangers of fatigue. And I was very proud to be part of I think it's the first world standard, CSA standard on fatigue risk management for first responders. And so I was part of that development process. And man, did I learn a lot. We know that fatigue and sleep issues are like next to mental health. It's billions of dollars of economic impact and loss due to injury, accidents, like just work production and everything else. So we know that is a major factor, but there's such resistance, I think, still in the world, first responder world, because there's this stigma, you shouldn't be sleeping at work, right? We always get made fun of this. There's even leadership that says, I'm paying you to work, right? And you need to be doing something active. And it's what? Do you want someone that is extremely fatigued trying to cut you out of a car, rescue off the side of a cliff, out of a burning building? Do you want the most rested, response ready person? And so to change that narrative in the organizational world of protecting sleep windows, providing sleeping quarters, making sure that you're doing assessments to make sure you're monitoring fatigue and giving people time for a break. Like you look at Hall 2 in Vancouver, they're running so many calls out of there and they're now on 24s. And fatigue is a real concern there, and sleep debt. And if they don't cycle crews out of there to catch a nap, a restorative rest period, they're going to put people in harm's way. And if you don't provide that, and then you send them home to drive home and they're fatigued, you have a 30-second, how about a 10-second micro nap on the highway doing 110 kilometers an hour? You're going to smash into somebody, and you can't control that. And so there's got to be this education and awareness piece that has to happen in the first responder world, where we see biologically sleep is so important, physically, emotionally, and mentally. If you don't take good care of that, all of the other things, it's like a domino effect. And when we're dealing with mental health challenges, the number one thing I hear is, I'm not sleeping well. And that compounds the issue. So if you can't get your sleep in order, you're not going to be able to deal with the mental health piece because you are unable to downregulate. You're dysregulated on an emotional and physical level. So yeah, getting that stuff in order, oh my God, we need to put way more energy into this and understanding it. I brought this up at our health and safety committee, and hey, there's a new CSA standard. We should be looking at this. It looks at all things from education, awareness, lighting, bedding, alarms in the hall, like all those things, like bright lights to get you out of that sleep, warm lights at night so you don't interrupt your circadian rhythm and your natural cortisol levels and melatonin. All those things are factors, right? So I know I'm rambling, but it's such a passion of mine right now, and we're trying to build a sleep education piece for firefighters from that committee, that CSA committee, that's really spawned some passion to get some education. I mean, he has it, right? The oil patch, Suncor, like they've realized that the importance of sleep education for their folks, and we're behind, I think. Yeah.
So the CSA standard is strictly for the fire service?
Yeah, it's built for first responders. So we had everybody from police, paramedicine, fire. We had a whole bunch of representatives across the industry and a whole bunch of sleep experts involved with developing it. And we tried to keep it as practical. I don't know. I've read a lot of CSA standards when it comes to like protective equipment and fall restraint, and they are so prescriptive. And you want to fall asleep? Just read a CSA document.
Yeah, exactly.
We tried to keep it practical. We tried to keep it shift agnostic, if you will, because a lot of people, we were worried that they would use it as a hammer to not get a 24-hour shift, or it doesn't matter what shift pattern you work. There are some that are better, but the ultimate thing is screening for fatigue, awareness, education, providing those self-assessments, and then supervisors getting the training to assess their folks. And it's like anything, like, are you getting assessed? Are you physically fit, emotionally fit? Are you fatigue fit? Because if you're unfit, then what do we do to help you so that you are an optimal performer? And I think that's the mentality versus this punitive disciplinary approach that is so often used, whether it's, because a lot of the, I'd say, poor behavior, sometimes it comes from bad sleep or a mental health injury. So if you're curious about, really care about people, let's get to the core of why. And I know my crew, they've got young kids, they're not sleeping well. I have no problems. You know what? You need freaking half an hour nap. You're way better to me in the bed, sleeping until we get a call so that you're rested for the rest of the 10-hour shift or 24-hour shift.
Yeah. And then
so we need to change that.
Yeah. Their performance after that nap will also be 10x as well, right? So
exactly. We've just reset that fatigue clock and we've erased some of that sleep debt so that they can get through the shift and be a professional and ready to rock.
High performing industrial. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Totally. Yeah.
So you talked about the fatigue assessment. Is that something that people can just do on their own, or is that a specific?
You can Google it. It's simply a self-check, right? It's almost like a mental health check. Are you falling asleep wherever you're sitting, sort of thing? Like, are you Yeah. And it just describes a whole bunch of symptoms and it basically it scores you. And so if you are fatigued, get a freaking nap basically. And it just gives you an awareness. And I think you have to be, yeah, like anything, you have to be honest about it, right? So you know what? Like you could just check Mono and you're like, oh, I'm fine. And you can suck it up. But
Right.
we have to break down that barrier around that punitive disciplinary piece where you say, you know what? I want you to be honest with me because it's in my interest, best interest, and your own best interest. So there's lots of them. And we've developed, there's a part of the standard that it's a implementation guide that will have some examples of those self-assessments.
Yeah. Any resources you can share, I'll add them to the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good.
So what, as a fire service, what can we do a little better? We talked in the beginning about some good things and some bad things over the time and kind of, but as a whole, where do you see the best or the biggest gap that we as a fire service can improve on for mind, body, and spirit of a firefighter?
So often it's put on the individual. You need to be more resilient. You need to be more self-aware. And the biggest gap, and I hear this from so many folks in the industry on the research side, the academia, and then from leadership is the organization. We have to improve the organizational culture if we're going to make any headway here. We can do meditation and mindfulness and do the Firefighter Resiliency Program all day long. If we put them back in a toxic organization or a non-supportive organization, we're going to continue to fail. And it's like Groundhog Day for me. And we've had members come through the program and then we put them back in a toxic environment where they have toxic leadership. And I'm like, we're doomed. Like, how do you fix that? And how in good conscience, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. How in good conscience do I put them back into that or allow them to, or I don't even have that. There's no right there, but how do we put them back in there when they're not going to be resourced? So to me, that's the crux of it is we have to negotiate benefits, right? We made some great gains. Like Burnaby just signed a contract with, I think it's 24 visits with a mental health professional up to $5,000, right? It should be freaking unlimited. If you need to unpack and process, and I don't give a shit if it's your childhood, your life, or your operational life. If you need stuff to fix and to heal from, you are the biggest asset. You have to treat your people as the biggest asset that you have. And I think that's the falling down of an organization is their numbers. And they don't see the value in resourcing the people because we have business cases that say for every dollar you spend on physical and mental health, there's going to be a return on investment. Like they've proven that time and time again. But in the fire service, the way our budget structure is, it's so much on wages and benefits. And I would say like pension, wages, not so much extended health benefit.
Right.
And we know that if you gave someone an unlimited, you can't waste mental health benefits. If you're going to use them and you're seeing a counselor, it's not frivolous. Like that's the mentality. Oh, they're just going to abuse it.
Yeah.
Who abuses mental health support? Like
yeah, I can't imagine a firefighter going to a therapist for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. There is always a reason for sure. So I would say education for leaders is crucial. They need to be, if they don't have it intrinsically, if they don't have it, I'm not going to throw leadership under the bus here. There's just some people that are intrinsically more caring and compassionate and empathetic and curious than others. And we see that when the leadership themselves have their own baggage and their own stuff that they haven't dealt with, they don't make such great role models and they're not going to be super supportive of their folks. So we need more education and leadership.
It's funny because it kind of goes back to your recruit thing. So they joined in the 70s or 80s.
Exactly.
They were treated like crap.
Yeah. And they turned into a bully.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And they're a product. They're a product of their environment, man.
Interesting how that can
it's a full loop. It's true. And I think that's where like we see this evolution. Right now, we're rolling out a 12-part video series for firefighters. It's occupational awareness for firefighters. And it was based on our creating a network of occupationally aware healthcare professionals. So that's clinical counselors, psychologists, HR managers, work safe claim managers. Like we built this network of knowledge and understanding there. And now we're kind of taking the Loon Lake model and Duncan Shields has put it into a 12, like through Matt Johnston and First Responder Health, put it into a 12-part video series. I'm not sure if you've heard it or seen this, but it is the biggest collaboration I've ever been part of. And so as an organization, it's a BC PFA, the BC Fire Chiefs, it's the Volunteer Association of Firefighters, BC Municipal Safety Association, WorkSafe BC, the training officers. Like, it is a massive collaboration of getting everyone aware of the mental health challenges, how to reach out for help, how to normalize, talk about stoicism, stigma, and et cetera, and getting everybody aware in these little bite-sized drip content videos.
Right. Nice.
The next evolution is something for leadership and how you can take care of your own self, and so that you can take care of your biggest assets, your firefighters. That's the evolution.
Yeah,
that's where we need to focus.
I don't think it's pointing fingers necessarily at the person or the leader. It's the environment they grew up in, as well as maybe just the education component, like you said, is they just aren't aware that their own self-care is affecting the organization. So.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. And I think, I can't remember which chief just said this recently, but there's a couple of real big mental health advocates. Steve Serbic being one of them, yourself being one of them, Karen Fry in Vancouver. There's some really strong out there. And what I heard from some leaders is that I can't take a knee because it could hurt my chance of promotion, or it could hurt my chance of getting a job. And that is what we need to change on an organizational level, right? I want to hire someone that has taken a knee, who's done the hard work, who can now use that lived experience to be an empathetic, curious leader. And I'll have so much more respect for that person. And maybe that's just me, because I know that's why I didn't take a knee myself, is because I'm the mental health guy. I'm in a leadership role with the union executive with Coquitlam at the time. I'm a vice president with the BC Professional Firefighters Association, and mental health is my portfolio. What would it look like for me to take a knee? And so I was struggling with this internal stigma myself. And finally I did. And it's the best thing I could do, because I think it just gives me that place. I can come from a place of knowing now. I can say, like yourself, I've been there. I can actually say I've been there. I had the courage to take a knee, and I wasn't given a crap about what other people thought of me. And other people came out to me later, because it's permission giving to see others do this. And they said, thank you for giving me the permission to reach out for help myself. And I've been lying to myself for years. Yeah. And I think that's the power of that. And that's what leaders in your role and the fire chief's roles need to do. We see they're way more effective when they do that. You'll have a much healthier organization because of it.
Yeah. From my experience and my kind of contacts in the fire chief world, there is still that stigma that if the fire chief takes that, just like your story, if the fire chief takes a knee, it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of they're not capable to lead this organization because they're weak. So that's a stigma as well that we have to.
That's it. We have to hit that head on and have that conversation and change that narrative. We do, because I look at my own fire chief in Coquitlam, there is so much stress. Like, he was in a fire investigator, so saw fire deaths and stuff like that, and came through the fire service. Wasn't ever a firefighter, but is one of the most humble and curious leaders, because he knows his knowledge base. He's one of the smartest dudes I know. And, but he knows how to stay in his lane, what his strengths and weaknesses are. But I can see the stress, the organizational stress that is almost overshadowing any traumatic event in his life, because of the pressure from City Hall, from the union, because we can be dicks sometimes, right? So it's like, we don't always make everyone's world lovely, but we fight for what we think is right. And we're going to stand up for our members. So of course we're going to do that. But that pressure from both sides, it's a pressure cooker, right? And you don't create a pearl. It's not like a beautiful clam and
there's no diamonds coming out of it.
No, what's inside is it's stress, and it's not a good kind of stress, right? It's the one that can be debilitating and physically hurt you. And so we don't, and I see this in the union leader roles too. We see so many people burn out and basically don't come back. And I think that breaks my heart, is that if we have this narrative where you can't take a knee because you're going to look like you're weak, yet you burn out, what good are you to me now? Like, you're hurt yourself. And that breaks my heart, because if you were resourced properly, if you had an organization, and I'm not blaming the organization, but let's just say the fire service as a whole, that was way more supportive, way more understanding, you could take a knee, get yourself better, and come back stronger. My God, would that be great? Because we've lost this knowledge, we've lost this passion and this understanding now. Now you're doing some amazing other work, and maybe that's your path. And I love it because I think you're going to spread the good word and people are going to learn from that. I mean, there's something good that comes from that. It breaks my heart when people in leadership roles go away and they never come back.
Yep.
I hate that, man.
And the ones that burn out are usually the ones that are high performing, high achieving, good people.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's fine. And sometimes the toxic ones are like cockroaches. You just can't kill them. I want the dinosaurs to crawl into the tar pit and just die a death because they're just not make my world an easy one, or for my firefighter family.
So what would be one huge nugget that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
If you see something, say something, like share it, don't wear it. Like all these cliche things there's such courage. And you've heard of James Gearing, right? From Behind the Shield, podcaster. He just came out the other day and talked about courage. That to me really resonated because we need everybody from the fire chief down to the rookie to have the courage to speak up, to take a knee, to be vulnerable, because there's such strength in that. That to me is, as if we could leave anything, we have the courage to help somebody else. And this is a lot to take away, but have a curiosity. If someone's acting like an a-hole, there's probably a reason why. They're not just born, maybe some people are, but let's just say the majority of people, there's a reason why they're acting the way they're acting. And be curious. Take the time to actually find out. Instead of spreading gossip, go up to them and go, hey, how are you doing? Like having those tough conversations like you're having. Have the tough conversations. Make sure you have space and time to do that. And then if they need help, resource them. Connect them to peer support. Connect them to counselors. Like First Responder Health has an amazing counseling network. I'll share you that link as well. You want to find someone in your area? Hey, you're really hurting. Like you're not the same guy that I knew last week. What is going on? Or gal. And so, yeah, have those courageous conversations. Be courageous yourself and know when to take a knee. It's all the stuff I've learned later on in life. I wish I knew it earlier, man.
But now with, the social media, podcasts, conferences, we can share that message so much broader, right? So
yes, totally. I'm excited.
Back to connection. We started the whole conversation back to connection. And I think that is the key moving forward, right? Is connection with our fire family.
Yeah. Yeah. And resources. So it's both. Yeah. I love that. It's a great circle back for sure. Awesome.
Steve, absolute honor. I love your passion for the fire service, for mental health, for people, the humankind. It's not just, we're not robots.
Yeah.
You are a man for the human. And I just really want to appreciate you putting your heart and soul into sharing this message with the world. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
All right, everyone. Steve Farina. Everyone stay well.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.